Okay, so before I jump in, I just want to say a thank you to everyone who continues to support my channel. I know I'm not always the first with everything. You know, when you live in Australia, a lot of the time a lot of the time I get up in the morning, check for updates on cases that I'm covering, and find that not only have there been updates, but everyone else has put out a video already. Add to that the ridiculous policy that YouTube has at the moment of running additional checks on videos that they're going to demonetize anyway to make you wait longer before you can publish, so that you work your ass on a video, you get it done, you get it uploaded, and then you get that notification saying, we're going to run an extra check, you're probably going to have to wait 24 hours. Meanwhile, everyone else's videos are getting viewed. By the time my videos go up, nobody really gives a damn. So it means a lot to me that there are those of you out there that come back time and time again and watch my content, even if I am a little bit late to the party, even if there are multiple other channels that you could have watched in the meantime. Now, on a similar note, last week, one of my subscribers said to me, you should mention your Buy Me a Coffee on your videos. A lot of people might not realise that you have it. And my response was, I don't like asking things like that on my videos because I feel like I'm a bit of a grifter if I do. I think so many of us have seen the way that some channels just really, really grift. They put their money up across the bottom of the screen. There is Greg Hughes, who will stop his live stream until he gets enough donations. And, you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's so against everything that I believe in. But I am going to mention my Buy Me a Coffee today, because YouTube is just absolutely crippling my channel right now. And look, you know, while I know people are trying to be helpful, please don't tell me any more ways that you believe I can fix this. Because honestly, I have tried everything and nothing makes a difference. So thank you very much for all the suggestions of try doing this, try doing that. But honestly, it just wears me down a little bit more every time someone makes a new suggestion now. Because I know that it doesn't make a difference. I know that nothing I can do is going to change this. And I know that sounds ungrateful and that people are just trying to help. But I just can't anymore. Now, one question that's been asked a few times that I will just answer here now. People have said, well, don't you get money from your videos from YouTube Premium? And yes, I do. That equates to probably almost $1 per video. So you do the maths. If I do 2 videos a day that are demonetized, then I've earned $2 for all my work. So yeah, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description for this video. There's always a Buy Me a Coffee link in the descriptions for all my videos. Should anyone wish to support me. But honestly, if you can't afford to support me in any other way, just hitting that like button, subscribing to my channel, leaving a comment on my videos, they all help me as well. And, you know, they're the things that get my videos pushed out into the algorithm. Because, you know, YouTube can penalise me. But eventually, if my videos are getting the likes, getting the comments, getting the subscriptions, hopefully that's going to convince YouTube that my channel is worthwhile. And of course, the flip side of that, if there is anybody on YouTube who is intentionally targeting my channel through reporting videos or reporting my channel or whatever it is these morons do, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to still continue to come back every day and do videos, even if I earn nothing. And you are not going to stop me from covering the Maddie Soto case. I strongly believe in karma, and I think that when people are doing malicious acts, karma will catch up with them. So let's move on from that and talk about Jack and Lily. So there's still been no progress when it comes to Jack and Lily, which is disappointing, but I really hope that the Mounties are on top of this and that it's just that they're keeping things quiet. However, I got up this morning and discovered that their grandmother has done an interview. So I'm going to cover that in this video. And then at the end of this video, there is a rather long video that was done by one of the media channels that's a what we know about this case kind of video. So I thought I'd go through that also and comment on that. So let's jump in first and have a look at the interview with the grandmother of these two children.
My heart tells me these babies are gone. My heart tells me that. I am the grandmother of Lily and Jack. I am the grandmother on the biological father's side. My son is Lily Sullivan. He's not in jail. He's never been out west. He does not have a criminal record. And right now he's living with me. He has been for 9 months.
You know, I have so much respect for this woman. She has been flat out on Facebook posting nearly every day, just really continuing to keep Lily and Jack's name out there. This is the first time she's spoken about her son. I think up until now, everyone's been protective of him and just tried to ignore the rumours, but the rumours have been pretty malicious. So kudos to her for finally speaking up and standing up for him on that part too. So all these rumours about him being in jail or on house arrest, no, he doesn't even have a criminal record. And this is coming from the source. And yes, you may say, well, you know, she's his mother, she's going to stand up for him and protect him and lie for him. I honestly don't get that from her at this point in time. She's being a straight talker. There's nothing evasive in the way she's speaking. There's nothing that stands out in her speech. She just comes across as being entirely genuine. And maybe this dates me, but I love her top. But that said, I love anything that's super colourful like that.
How did you find out that Lily and Jack were missing?
The mum of my grandson called me. We were in town. She asked if I heard the news. She sent me the article that was on Facebook showing the kids missing. I couldn't call Malay yet, so I waited till we got home. And I called, well, I didn't call her, I texted her. And she told me that, yes, that the kids were missing, that they've been missing since this morning.
Finally, someone who actually shows emotion for these children. Someone who clearly cares enough that they are missing and is actually affected by their absence. You know, I don't know what was going on with Malaya when she did that interview, but there was no emotion there. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she was in a state of denial. Who knows? but she certainly didn't seem to be in any kind of distress when she did that interview. And if you're going to turn around and tell me, oh, but Daniel was crying when he did those interviews, go back and have another look. That was all fake. I should say, in my opinion there, but honestly, blind Freddie could see it.
I was in a state of panic, shock. But in the back of my mind, I kept saying, well, they'll find them. I mean, I'm assuming that they'd find them. So I told her, well, we'll head out first thing in the morning and help with the search. It was around between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. A couple of cop cars pull into the driveway. The lights wake me up that I'm a fairly light sleeper, so I see the cars pull in, so I knew what it was. So they come inside. They only stood in the kitchen. They wanted me to wake Cody up, and they wanted to know when was the last time he had seen the kids, and that they were just making sure that the kids weren't here. And then they left.
Okay, look, I get it. If there was a possibility of parental abduction, then by going at 3:30 in the morning, they're basically minimising any risk factors on the off chance that, let's say, you have a parent who has abducted the children. The parent may become violent, may have a weapon, any of those sorts of things. The children are, of course, more likely to be unattended at 3:30 in the morning than during the day. But that said, for an innocent family to be woken up at 3:30 in the morning by officers wanting to speak to them about these missing children, that in itself would be a whole other kind of trauma.
So we showed up Saturday morning, me and my sister, and we met up with my daughter, and we started, well, I asked Malaya, I said, Malaya, I said, you know your kids. Nobody knows their kids like their mom. Where do your kids normally go to play out in the yard? What direction do they usually like to explore? And she said, well, they always play up in the little woods right on the side. I said, well, okay. I said, we'll start from that point and we'll work our way out. We had spoken to a search and rescue, and we weren't allowed on the other side because that's where they were searching at the time. So we just started combing through the woods up through there. We were gone for a couple of hours. I'm yelling for Lily and Jack. We always call Jack Jackie Boy. And yeah, that went on for a few hours, but those woods, I started to feel that I can't see them being in the woods. There's trees everywhere. You literally have to climb over trees, climb under bushes. It is really, really thick.
This is what so many other people have said, that it's just so thick there, so dense there, that the chances that those children did wander off there are pretty slim. I wouldn't be surprised if what she's saying here about, after being out there searching for a few hours and she got the feeling that they weren't out there, I can't help thinking if that's, a bit of maternal instinct or, grandmother's instinct. There, maybe there was just that gut instinct telling her, no, they're not out here. I noticed that she didn't mention Cody in all this, and I'm wondering what the situation is there in terms of why he didn't feel that he could go and join in searching. That is, of course, if he wanted to go search for his children. We don't really know what the situation is there.
We come back out and I went in to see Malaya again. I assumed she was in shock. She was very, very non-emotional, very just flat, monotone. But Malaya's very soft-spoken anyway. That she's not usually excitable. I thought that's made her a really great mom. She was an excellent mom.
Now, I'm not sure if I played them on here or if I played them for members, but I did play some excerpts of some videos of Malaya when she was a teenager, when she was 16. And you can see she's quietly spoken. She does come across as having that sort of calm kind of personality. But I also got a sense of her having possibly a little bit of naivety there. Now, I want to acknowledge here, there's no biological connection here between Malaya and this woman, other than that Malaya was the mother of her grandchildren. She doesn't have that familial obligation to stand up for Malaya. And clearly Malaya and her son, whatever relationship was there, is over and has been over for quite some time. So she's not doing this out of loyalty to her son. And let's be real, I mean, her grandchildren have vanished. And it appears that they are probably no longer alive. If she had any doubts about Malaya as a mother, she certainly wouldn't be saying these things right now. She hasn't got any reason to defend her. You would expect her to speak out on behalf of her grandchildren rather than on behalf of their mother, if there happened to be any sort of conflict of loyalty there.
She never raised her voice at the kids. That it was always, now Lily, what did Mommy say? And I used to think, now if anybody's meant to be a mom, it was her.
That's pretty high praise. Like I said, she's not family for Malaya. She's the grandmother of Malaya's children, but she's not even like a mother-in-law for Malaya. Malaya and her son are together. So that is high praise. It's a really sweet thing to say.
A part of me still feels that.
Why only a part of you still feels that? What do you mean?
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here and say this news reporter needs to go and teach Detective Morris how to interview people. Because kudos to her. She is definitely listening to what is being said here and responding accordingly. Now, if you are unsure who Detective Morris is, if you are following the Madeline Soto case, here's the detective from Kissimmee who took over most of the interviewing after Kissimmee took over the case, and didn't appear to me to be a particularly great listener, because more often than not, he let things just go that should have had follow-up questions.
After seeing the place, seeing the condition of the home, it was like the total opposite of what I knew of Malaya. She was always clean, very clean about herself, about the kids, about her home. This home looked more like a camp. Now, I don't know if it's from all the people that were there, because I didn't show up till the day after, but it was very unkempt. I was pretty surprised.
Now that's really interesting to hear. I mean, we're talking about a young mother with 3 children under the age of 7, so obviously things are going to be challenging for her. I gather that if Daniel was working a lot, he may not have been doing much around the house, but it's interesting that she's saying the place was somewhat unkept. Something changed in that young lady's life, Malaya, that led to this point, to the point where we are now trying to figure out what happened to her 2 children. Because it sounds like previously there would have been no chance of this happening. So what changed?
I love you.
Lily is, she was my little dream girl, that's the first granddaughter. And I love that she had the brown hair and she had a space between her teeth, which I had when I was a kid. So yeah, she was our little princess.
This is such a stark contrast to the Madeline Soto case, where we didn't hear anyone really speaking with any kind of fondness about Maddie. And yet here we have a grandmother who clearly utterly doted on these grandchildren. And yes, for those of you who possibly only follow my channel for this case, that is my chihuahua snoring very, very loudly in the background. And here's the thing, in all these photos, these kids look so very happy. I think Jack seemed to have had a bit of a serious side, but Lily certainly seems to have been loving life.
Jack was such a sober, serious little baby that he didn't like to smile. You could tickle him, and he would look at you ever so serious, like he was really studying you.
The kid is a thinker, I get that. My cousin's eldest son is a lot like that. It always was a running joke in the family when he was going through school that basically you could expect when the school photos came that he would not be smiling in his school photos. And don't get me wrong, this is a kid with a wicked sense of humour, a kid with a fantastic family life, well loved, and his brother and sister always had big smiles in their school photos, but him, no way known. And trying to get any photos of him with him smiling were almost an impossibility. In the end, he took pride in the fact that if there was a photo of him, he wouldn't be smiling in it.
And so how long were your son and Malaya together?
3.5 years, I think it was, yeah. I thought they were the picture-perfect family. Then Malaya started to tell me that they were having problems and she wasn't happy. She told me that she wasn't happy and she thinks she's going to leave. And I told her that we supported whatever she decides, that one good parent is way better than two broken ones.
You know, it's a shame that things didn't work out between Malaya and Cody, because this woman seems to have like a really deep kind of wisdom about her, and she does come across as being a really kind-hearted person. I mean, to have your son's girlfriend come to you, or partner, come to you and say, look, you know, it's not working out, I think I'm going to leave him, and to say, look, you know, that's okay, we'll support you in whatever you need to do. That's big. I think too, more importantly, it shows you the level of trust that Malaya had in her. But that said, I also got a strong impression from watching Malaya's videos that she's the sort of person that will trust people. She will trust everybody with an almost innocence until that trust is betrayed. And I know people change between 16 and 26, but I just got a real vibe from Malaya, from watching her videos when she was younger, of her as being someone who is a little bit vulnerable and perhaps incredibly trusting of people.
And then how did that change your relationship with Lily and Jack?
I thought it was going to change, but it didn't. Yeah, it didn't change. Malaya, she was a sweetheart. Anytime we wanted to see the kids, she'd come by for a visit. She'd bring them by all the time. It was actually really, really good.
So when was the last time you saw the children?
1.5 years, almost, really, it's about 1 year and 9 months.
So that, of course, coincides with just before Malaya had Meadow. So definitely things changed for that family around the time that Meadow was born. So why is it? Was it Malaya's own choice to not stay in contact with the grandmother of her children? Or was she somehow isolated from the people around her.
How did you deal with that?
Really, to be honest, maybe I didn't deal good enough with it. I looked at the fact that when her and my son separated, my son walked away. He chose to walk away, that she wanted sole custody of the kids. So she petitioned the courts for sole custody, and when she did that, he said he was done.
You know, it's really sad that we live in a world where grandparents' rights aren't really acknowledged. So, you know, Malaya's petitioned for sole custody. Her son's gone, okay, whatever, he's done, he's wiped his hands of the children, which has meant that she's basically lost out as well. And that would be so heartbreaking because legally she didn't have any comeback from that. You know, all she could do would be to maybe slap her son up the side of the head and say, I want to see my grandchildren, so you need to get your ass organised, get a lawyer, and petition for shared custody. So, you know, clearly she's made the heartbreaking decision not to interfere with her son's decisions, you know, not to try and pressure him or anything, and let him make his own life choices. But now look where we are. And I'm certainly not criticising her. I'm not saying that she did the wrong thing. I'm just saying how sad it is that, you know, she must be having these regrets, wishing that she'd have maybe encouraged him or something like that, you know, wishing she'd pushed him a bit, wishing that her grandchildren were still around and that things were different. I'd be very interested to know when this actually occurred, like the petitioning for sole custody, if that did happen around the 18-19 month period before all this occurred. Because obviously the big question there would be, what role did Daniel Martel play in this? You know, what sort of manipulation came into it that may have made Cody just go, yeah, I can't fight this? Or is he just someone who is normally a quitter? But honestly, from everything I've observed when it comes to Daniel, he strikes me as being someone who is highly manipulative. And I think he would want the children's father out of the picture so that he can be the individual who is 100% in control. Now, once again, this is only my opinion based on observations. I'm not saying this is factual information, but basically this is how I see things, having watched pretty much every interview, as far as I know, that Daniel has done. And don't get me wrong, these children haven't been found, which means that quite likely both parents have chosen not to talk, regardless of their roles in this. Because I'm not looking beyond Malaya and Daniel. I believe they both know what happened to these children. And, you know, for all we know, Malaya may have spoken. Maybe she has no idea where the children are. And she's still told authorities her side of it all. But at the end of the day, both her and Daniel, no matter how you look at it, have to know what happened to these children. They don't both necessarily know where the children are now, but logically they both have to know what happened to these children. Now, I just want to clear up something that seems to be growing legs, and that is the rumour that Meadow is in protective custody, as in she is in foster care. That is not the case. We have not had any official information suggesting that, for starters. But not only that, if you go back and you listen to one of the more recent interviews with Daniel Martel, he specifically says that he wants people to lay off on Malaya because it's affecting her mental health and it's going to affect their daughter. Meaning that Malaya has custody of their daughter at that point in time. Basically, it wouldn't be affecting their daughter's well-being if she was not with her mother.
Were you ever formally questioned?
Yes.
So then it's about a month after Lily and Jack are last seen that they come and formally question you.
So it's about 3 weeks. They question Cody for an hour and a half in the vehicle, and then they question me for 2 hours in the vehicle.
Okay, so I get the need to interview them separately. I also get that it was probably more convenient for her and Cody for the Mounties to go to them to interview them rather than to expect them to go into an office somewhere. But that's going to be, if that audio ever becomes available, that's going to be such a bugger to listen to, because you know that when it comes to audio that's been recorded in vehicles, it's never all that great. At least she does appear to be in a quiet neighbourhood, so that should make a difference. And she also doesn't have a snoring chihuahua at her feet, which would also make a difference. And I know there's people out there who've had their little bit of conspiracy theory attempts where they've gone, what if Cody kidnapped the children? Well, they would have interviewed him for much, much longer than an hour and a half if they thought he had anything to do with the disappearance of these children. They would have been asking him about his relationship with Malaya, about what Malaya's like as a parent, and if he knew anything about Daniel.
How did that feel to you?
I didn't mind. I mean, to me, I expected I'm the grandmother, so it wasn't a surprise to me. I'm assuming the sooner they do all that, I wish they would have done it sooner, that the sooner they can move on.
You know how refreshing it is to be covering a case and to be watching an interview with someone who is clearly kind-hearted, clearly has nothing to hide, and is being as upfront as they possibly can. You know, I have a huge amount of respect for this woman. I was initially a little bit cynical when I saw her pop up on Facebook. I think just because of seeing how much Daniel Martel was trying to control the narrative, and I know that people were being so critical of her son and making up stories of her son, and I thought, oh, you know, here's someone else that wants to insert themselves, someone who wants to share their opinions. But I noticed that she has kept pretty quiet in terms of sharing things on Facebook. It was more often than not, it was just sharing photos of the children, or you know, things that aren't her demanding to be the centre of attention. And she just strikes me as someone halfway decent. And I agree. I would feel the same way as her if it had taken that long for them to come and interview me. If I were in her situation, I'd be like, I wish they had done it sooner because they may have got some important information and they also may have been able to move on with their investigation.
So I didn't have a problem. My son was a little upset about it. He said they made him feel like he did something wrong, and he said he hadn't seen the kids in 3 years. So he was a little upset about it. That he said that they really come at him hard. They wanted to know what her favorite color was, and he said they were babies when I seen them last. He said she was just learning what she wanted to figure out to eat. I don't know what her color is.
So Malaya must have gone for sole custody quite early on in the piece then, because Jack would have only been just 1 at that point in time. But what's interesting here is that here we are learning that Cody hasn't seen his children in 3 years. Well, that sounds like basically once Malaya started going out with Daniel, that is basically when Cody stopped seeing his children. And I know people are going to go, oh, you're really out for Daniel. But everything to me is pointing back to there being an issue with Daniel, even down to the point where these children suddenly stopped seeing their biological father when Daniel came on the scene. Now, I do want to add here that I would imagine that there was a little bit of additional sensitivity there in terms of this interview that Daniel did, in that he probably feels a little bit inadequate because of not being part of their lives. So being questioned with things like what's Lily's favourite colour would have just, driven it home so much harder and made every aspect of the interview feel even worse, even more critical. So I think there was probably definitely a bit of self-reflection going on there, and possibly a little bit of self-guilt for his lack of involvement with his children. And, let's be real here too. Obviously, part of the point of the questioning was to see if he could be triggered, gauge his personality, gauge his connection to Malaya, gauge his attachment to the children, just in case by some chance this guy had have gone down and abducted his children or something like that. Of course, it's also possible that he was being interviewed by an a-hole who just gets a kick out of making people squirm. But, at the end of the day, what we're looking at here is detectives who are just doing their jobs. It's 3 weeks in, they didn't know where these children were. They probably have leads on what may have happened, we don't know. But, the goal here is to find out what happened to these children and hopefully bring them home. So that means covering every single possibility. And if that means making the biological father squirm a little bit, well, then they're going to do that.
So yeah, he was pretty upset.
Have they ever talked to him again since then?
A couple of days ago, they had contact and they told him that they weren't looking his way anymore, that everything was fine.
So that's interesting. They actually were looking at Cody for a period of time. But for them to get back to him and say they're not looking at him anymore, everything's fine, makes me wonder if maybe they are headed somewhere, in a particular direction. Maybe they do have some solid information maybe they're close to figuring out this case. And I know I've said that the case feels a little bit like the Summerwell case, and that I hope desperately that we're not talking about this in another 4 years' time, wondering where Jack and Lily went. But I really get the feeling that the Mounties are all over this case, and that they are working it as hard as they can and doing their damnedest to get a resolution. I also think this is possibly the loudest Amira has ever snored.
And have they ever given you any information?
No, it's always the same thing.
Which is what?
They've got everybody on it. They are looking at all avenues. They can't divulge any information that could compromise their investigation. It's the exact same words.
They can't divulge any information that would compromise their investigation. That says to me that they do have a solid investigation going on in the background. And I think the first indication that we're going to get of what it is they are investigating will be when there is an announcement of an arrest or an announcement that the children have been recovered.
Why are you so sure they're not in the woods?
I have children. I have grandchildren. And I see what kids are like through the woods. There's no reason for any child to wander deep into the woods. There's just not. I think somebody hurt these kids. I think somebody hurt them.
I agree with her. And hearing her say it confirms it for me. I think there's probably more here that she's not saying. But she knows these kids. She knows Malaya. She's been to the property now. So she knows the situation there. And she seems pretty certain those kids did not wander off into the woods. I feel sorry for her for the position that she is in. To know, to feel in your soul that something bad has happened to these children, but to not know what that is, to not know where they are, and to be waiting for answers.
You don't sound very hopeful.
No. Our last day searching on Monday and seeing the woods and seeing the searchers and everybody everywhere. There's no way those kids are in the woods.
This is what so many people have been saying from the very start. Those children did not wander off into the woods. I also do not believe for one moment that they were abducted. That puts whatever happened to these children back at the house.
There is nothing more pure and innocent than a 6 and a 4-year-old. And they deserve so much better than what they got.
That is such an incredibly powerful statement. There is nothing more pure and innocent than a 4 and a 6-year-old, and they deserve so much better than what they got. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? I know I said at the start of this video that I was going to go through another media video, but I think I'm going to cover that in a different video now, because I think this is an appropriate place to finish. And I just think this video stands alone. I wasn't sure what was going to be said in this interview, so I didn't know really how much time I'd be spending on talking about it. but I think it's been a really powerful interview to listen to. I think it's given us a lot of new insights. But at the same time, I think it's confirmed a lot of the things that we already suspected. You know, I've said from day one, my focus has always been back on that house. Back on the two people who lied and told contradicting stories. I believe one person's actions led to whatever happened to these children, and that the other person perhaps felt powerless and allowed those actions to occur. But I really feel that these children did not wander off. They were not abducted. And I just pray that investigators are able to find out enough and get enough evidence in order to be able to prosecute in this case. And more than anything, I just hope that these children can be brought home. So that brings us to the end of this video. Now, the first thing I want to say is, please be kind with your comments. This woman chose to come forward and speak for these children. This is the first person that I truly believe has spoken for these children, not spoken out of a need to control the narrative. She hasn't stood up for anyone. She's been completely honest, it appears, throughout this entire interview. She's told it how it is. I saw absolutely no red flags whatsoever in this interview. There was nothing in her language, there was nothing in her body language. She struck me as being a genuine, caring person, a grandmother who's lost her grandchildren, who had nothing to do with it, and who had no control over what was going on in their lives for the past 18 months to 3 years. I'm grateful that she did this interview, and I really hope that people can see where she's coming from with this and see how much pain she's going through. Now, I'm certainly not saying that I don't want people to share their opinions. All I'm asking is that if you have an opinion that may be in some way negative towards this woman, please try and word it in a sensitive way. We need to remember who the people are that we really should be focusing on in this case. And I don't think it achieves anything focusing on someone who hasn't seen these children for 18, 19 months. So, on that note, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button. YouTube likes that. And maybe if I get enough people hitting like and leaving comments, YouTube might actually start leaving me alone. So please hit that like button and please leave a comment. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.